So it gives me immense pleasure to welcome today's speaker, that is Mr. David S. Ball, and the topic is preparing effective synopsis guidelines. We are much honored to welcome Mr. David S. Ball, the president of the American AML Society and a nationally accredited philatelic judge. He is the author of American Astrophilately, The First 50 Years, a nationally recognized book award finalist. Mr. David S. Ball also serves as the U.S. delegate on astrophilately to the Federation Internationale de Philately and is the sole expert on the subject for the American Philately Society. With over 20 years of dedicated collecting in astrophilately, he brings with him exceptional expertise and insights to the field. Over to you, Mr. David S. Paul. We are looking forward to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Arun, thank you so much, and thank you, PK. I'm delighted to be invited back. What I wanted to share with you today, particularly for people that are considering exhibiting, is to talk about Synopsis. And I had the opportunity to speak to some people on the committee a week or two ago, and they said, well, a synopsis isn't really a requirement for putting in an exhibit. And I said, yeah, that's true, but you might want to do it. And that's what I want to share with you is why you might want to do a synopsis and how you might go about that, how you can leverage that to your best advantage. So there are a number of reasons why we exhibit, and it's okay if it's more than one reason. For some people, they just have stamps that they like or envelopes, and they want to share that joy with others. They want to show off their collection. And for those people, you really don't have to worry about what the FIP regulations are or pleasing judges or anything like that. You just want to do what you want to do. And that's one of the joys of stamp collecting, is you can collect what you want, you can show what you want, it's fine. Other people will exhibit because they want to educate others. They want to advocate for something. They want to take the knowledge that they have and impart it to somebody else. So for them, they have a special obligation to be able to communicate effectively. And that's fine. You know, if what you're trying to do is you're trying to be an activist, or you're trying to impart a subject. And there are other people that do it because they want to compete. They want to challenge themselves to get the best ribbon or get the best exhibit in the show. And for them, they specifically need to take care to look at the FIP regulations and see what's expected of you. And it may very well be that your motivation falls somewhere amongst these three, about showing what you're passionate about, being able to share with people something that you want to educate them on, and also to get a nice ribbon. So let's assume that at least you've got a couple of those different motivations. And the question is, who are you trying to communicate with? Well, it turns out that you have two audiences. You have people that are walking by in the stamp show or in the virtual stamp show, and you're doing it for them, right? You have that audience, and so you need to be able to communicate with them. But you have a second group, and that is a jury that is evaluating how well you are meeting the expectations of the regulations. And it turns out that the way that you communicate to those two groups is different. And I want to share with you, and I'm going to kind of put them side by side so that you can see that the title page and the synopsis are different. The objectives are different, and you need to treat them differently. So the title page will have your purpose on it, and your scope, and your plan, and maybe some illustration, a stamp or an envelope or a map or something like that. And the purpose of the title page is to draw in the viewer. The viewer might be walking past hundreds of frames of stamps, and you want them to stop with yours. So you need something that is simple, it has some white space to it, it tells you a little bit about what's going on, it kind of invites you in, and then the person will stop and they'll look at your exhibit. The synopsis is a one-way communication that you can have prior to the exhibit between you and the jury. And for them, they need different things. First of all, they're at a different level, okay? The person that's walking past who comes in off the street may not be a collector. So if, for example, you talk to somebody about a cover, if it's somebody off the street who doesn't collect stamps, they may not know that a cover means an envelope. But if you're talking to a jury, they know that. So the level of understanding, the kinds of things that the jury is looking for are different from that of the people that are walking by your exhibit. So the synopsis needs to be saying different things than the title page. And so why do we study regulations? Well, there are two things. One is it helps you to establish the mechanics of the exhibit. And the other is, imagine if you had a big exam coming up and you could see what the test questions were going to be, and they even gave you the answers before the test. Well, that's what FIP regulations are. So I would encourage you to go to the FIP website, look at the general regulations, and then the special regulations for the exhibit class that you're preparing for. Let's talk for a moment about where points come from. So when we evaluate an exhibit, they come from principally three areas. One is the treatment, which is your story. That's 20%. And the importance is 10%. So when I think about treatment, I think of, some reason that we started in this particular place. Why did you pick that date? Why did you pick that flight? And then why did you stop where you stopped? The answer shouldn't be because, well, I ran out of envelopes or I ran out of space. It's there is some story that makes sense talking between this starting point and this stopping point. And then there's this golden thread in between, and that's your story. And a fifth of your score is telling your story. It's treatment. 10% is importance. And importance, jurists argue about this all the time. What is important? Well, frankly, if you talk to any collector, you say, well, is your area important? They say, well, it's important to me. So, importance can mean a lot of things. But let me just simply give you a sense that if we had an exhibit of, let's say, the penny black, and it was a traditional exhibit, and someone was doing plating, and they had all kinds of interesting covers and new research and all this kind of stuff. You would look at that and you would say, well, it's obviously important, right? Not only is the penny black the first stamp of Great Britain, it also kind of started all of philately, right? So that's a 10 out of 10. There's nothing more important than something like the Queen Victoria stamp. In contrast, you might be a topical collector, and let's say you're interested in Walt Disney, and you say, well, I like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Well, that's fine, and you can do a nice exhibit of that. But if we're trying to assess the significance, either in this particular collecting area or in philately in general, I think we can all agree that the penny black is probably a more significant exhibit, has more importance than a Donald Duck exhibit. So we give 10% to importance. Then there's a condition, things that are pretty ratty. We'll look at it and we'll say, well, there are probably better examples you can come up with. Keep looking. So we give some points for that. There's rarity, and rarity, we prefer to call it difficulty of acquisition. So there are things that are rare. Okay, there may be only one of them in the world, but it may be something that nobody cares about. And there may be other things that are not quite as scarce, and yet they're in such demand. So rarity and demand and market value and stuff are all kind of wrapped together. But as a jury, we'll look at things and we'll say, well, these are special pieces, and we expect you to outline those for us, both in the exhibit, like maybe with a red box around it or something, and also in the synopsis, telling us, hey, this is the important stuff that you need to be looking at. This is when we say that this is a difficult and a valuable exhibit, this is why. So 20% is rarity, and then 5% is presentation. If you do it on a color paper that's very difficult to read, or you have too much text, or the font is very, very difficult, we'll certainly mention that. But it turns out that the majority of the points where people can improve falls under knowledge. And for FIP, it's a score of 35%, philatelic knowledge being a quarter of your grade, and then 10% personal research, new things that you bring. So philatelic knowledge is learning all there is to know about the subject and being able to impart that, and then adding on to that, writing articles, monographs, books, giving presentations, these things where you're bringing something to the table and adding to the corpus of knowledge. So when you're talking to the jury, when you're creating the synopsis, in the United States, we use this thing called an EEF, an exhibit evaluation form. And we've broken out our responses. We've explained to you why we gave you the score we gave you. And you can see it says treatment, importance, philatelic knowledge, rarity, presentation. We're giving you these comments, and this is generally not done in FIP. But this is our one-way communication back to you, and we're telling you, what we liked or didn't like, or why we didn't give you maximum points and things like that. So one of the things that you might do in creating your synopsis is giving us information and breaking it out in these sections, breaking them out with treatment and importance and philatelic knowledge and rarity and presentation. So when you're talking to us in the synopsis, first of all, less is more. All right. I'll find people sending me a synopsis and it'll be a 10-page synopsis. And it's like, no, we have about an hour to prepare for each exhibit before we go and look at them, to look things up, to try to familiarize ourselves with the subject matter. And reading, and we'll have a number of exhibits that we're responsible for. So reading a 10-page synopsis, first of all, it's mostly histories and things that are not of any use to us. So less is more. Your synopsis really shouldn't be any more than a single piece of paper. It can be front and back, but if it's got a staple in it or a paper clip, you've written too much. It needs to be less. And it needs to be easily digestible. So if you break it out by treatment, importance, philatelic knowledge, rarity, condition, and things like that, that's the way in which we think. So if you make it digestible, then you're helping us out. You're also helping yourself. And also consider your audience. So with the judges, they're normally fairly experienced philatelists. Okay, you don't have to explain every little thing to them, and they may know more about your subject than you do, but it's likely that you know more than they do, because they can't be experts in everything, and you've immersed yourself in this subject for a considerable amount of time. So you'll obviously treat them as experienced philatelists, but also explain to them. You say, hey, look, I've been looking at this for a long time, and these are the important things I want you to consider. Help them along, help them to understand. And when I say toot your horn, you have things that are of value there, things that people may not understand why they're so rare. And this is your opportunity to say, look, I've been collecting this stuff for 35 years. The only examples of these are in the British collection and this one. And this one just came up last year, and now it's been shown for the first time in an exhibit, in this exhibit. That's going to impress us, right? That's going to help your score. That's going to help us to understand. So toot your horn. If you've written articles and you've been collecting this stuff for a while, tell us that. If there's something that's rare, explain it to us. And who's the expert? So I just want you to know that even though jurists are experienced people, you're probably the expert in this subject, and you need to convey that when you do your synopsis. So I just got this the other day, and I'm preparing for a stamp show in January, and people are sending us title pages and synopsi. Title page explaining to the visitor what they can expect to see in an exhibit, and the synopsis, a one-way communication between the exhibitor and the jury. Which is this? Does anybody want to chime in and tell me whether or not this is a title page or a synopsis? Anybody? Okay.
Looks like a synopsis.
Yeah, well, it was sent to me as a synopsis, okay? But I don't think it's either one, all right? It looks like a page from a history book. First of all, if something has lots and lots of words in it, it's not very helpful, okay? This is just a history or something, It's not really a communication. It's not explaining to me the things that I need to know as a jurist. It's not a title page. It doesn't have the purpose, the scope, the plan. So this is worthless. Okay, I mean it's interesting if you want to read about railroad post offices, but it's not a communication to either visitors or to the jury. So let's look at some examples of titles and synopsis. Okay, so here's one, Lindbergh Flies the Mail, 1926 to 1931. So for the people walking by the exhibit, we're going to tell them what the purpose of it is, what the scope of the exhibit is, and show them an organizational plan. Maybe put a pretty picture on it, kind of give them an idea of what to expect, and kind of draw them into the exhibit. Now, for the synopsis, the purpose may be written a little bit differently. Here, we're communicating with the jury, and by the way, you can see after synopsis, it's written when it was updated, because you may be showing this exhibit over and over again. And if you're showing it to a jury, they may have seen this exhibit last year, and here they know it's been updated, and you've updated it, and you can explain in the synopsis, oh, these are the changes that I've made since last year, that sort of thing. So in this synopsis, it's got a purpose. It talks a lot about the challenge, because if you just went on eBay and you tried to buy an envelope carried by Charles Lindbergh, you could buy one for $5. So you think to yourself, well, how tough could it be to do an exhibit on Lindbergh? But it turns out that if you want to get one from each one of his 103 flights, it's actually kind of tough. So on the bottom there, we've got some of the highlights, things that the jury should be looking for. And it also says here, missing. So it's acknowledging that there is still room to grow, that there are things that I know should be in the exhibit but aren't, and explaining what the organization are. In terms of references, we don't need a big bibliography of every book you've looked at on the subject. This is just a short list, just a couple of handful of things that people can look at if they want to familiarize themselves with this topic. It's best that it not be internet sources, because often those end up changing, but some readily accessible something so that somebody could be introduced to your topic. If there are examples of things that you've written on this topic, you might want to put those in the references, and that kind of helps you out. And you can see that's what was done here. Here's another one, pushing the envelope. This is rocket mail. So the purpose and scope, explaining to people what the organization is, the exhibit plan. And then for the synopsis, again, it's broken up: treatment and importance, philatelic knowledge, personal study and research, condition and rarity. I mean, that's the way the jury is thinking. So if you present it to them like that, it helps them. Here's one. This is a postcard exhibit. Again, purpose, scope, plan. That's what you give the public. And for the jury, you can see this one was very short. There wasn't a lot to say about it. They're doing it. The exhibit's being done because they're pretty postcards. There's not a lot of knowledge. I mean, there's knowledge associated with the production of the postcards, but there aren't any roots or rates or auxiliary markings or anything like that. So, I mean, the instructions, what we're trying to convey to the jury, is really kind of small, and it doesn't take up much room. Here's another one: Soviet and American drift stations. So, you want to invite in the people that are walking by, and then in the synopsis, again, you're talking about the treatment and how complete it is and what's missing, and kind of giving the jury an idea of why you went in this particular direction. Or, in this particular exhibit, it shows mail that was carried from a Russian base at the North Pole. And there's no mail that's shown for the first and second and third stations that were there. And so the first thing as a jurist is I'd say, well, you should get some mail from those three, missions. And it turns out that there isn't any. So it's important to make that communication in the synopsis. And once you've said that, you'd say, look, there isn't any mail from those first three, then they're fine with it. But unless they understand that, then you're going to get gigged for it, or they're going to have questions in their minds.
Thank you so very much, Mr. David S. Paul. It's been absolutely insightful.